There's broad criticism from government and industry of China's decision to impose strict new limits and tariffs on Australian beef exports. Harry Clark joins us with the details. Harry, good morning to you. So it sort of came quite quickly, didn't it? How will the tariffs work?
G'day, Janie. It was out of the blue. China's Ministry of Commerce has announced that it will impose strict new quotas on Australian beef exports, and then anything over that will impose a 55% tariff in Australia's quota for this year being 2026. The limit is set at 2.6 million tonnes. And for context, in last year, 2025, that's about how much beef Australia exported to China by November. In 2028, the quota will increase to 2.8 million tonnes, and anything over that will impose that 55% duty. The Trade Minister Don Farrell and the Agriculture Minister Julie Collins said they're both very disappointed by China's decision. Here is Prime Minister Albanese and Opposition Leader Susan Lee.
We are communicating with our counterparts. This is something that wasn't Australia being singled out. This is a general position that China has put. We are advocating, as we always do, for Australian industry.
And makes it very clear that Australia should not be included in any of these arrangements when it comes to restrictions on the trade of beef to China or additional tariffs that may be placed on that trade.
And Janie, the Australian Meat Industry Council said it was extremely disappointed by the decision. Australia's beef exports to China are worth $3 billion a year, and there are fears that could be slashed by $1 billion under this new tariff regime.
All right, Harry Clark, thank you very much. Well, joining us live is Nationals leader David Littleproud. David, good morning to you. So John Condon from Beef Central has just put out a release there, and he says that the measures are far from impartial and impact Australia more than some others. Are you disappointed by this announcement?
Yeah, we're gutted. I mean, this is $1 billion potentially that'll come out of the wallets of Australian farmers, and particularly what that does is flow through to regional communities that'll feel the impact of this. This is something that's been reviewed for some 12 months, and we don't believe there is a case for China to do this and to single out Australia in this. Our beef production and the product that we send to China is different to what is produced in China. This is really the impacts of significant imports from South America, and it's South America that should be singled out, not Australia. We're less than 10% of actual total beef imports into China. And so this is really where Australia has been harshly dealt with. And I think it's important the Albanese government looks closely at the reasoning behind this to ensure that it's within WTO rules, continues dialogue, but also accelerates the expansion of other markets to be able to get product around the world into new and expanding markets.
And you mentioned other markets, and I believe China is Australia's second most lucrative beef export, USA being the first. What will this mean, and how easy is it to look at other markets?
Yeah, and it depends on the type of cut. I mean, the US takes a lot of our ground beef, which is a lower quality. It goes into their burgers. The higher quality end has gone predominantly into Asia. And this is where we'll have to look at, and particularly at the moment, they take a significant amount that goes into casseroles and those types of dishes, which in particular in their winter is very important to them. So it is about trying to maintain market ownership in China as much as we can. Understand we'll probably do this quota by about July, August. And then everything after that will have a 55% tariff imposed on it. So finding new markets in other parts of Asia will be very important. Key markets like Japan and Korea and also Vietnam will be pivotal in us trying to be able to diversify those markets for Australian beef producers.
Switching topics, David, pressure's building on a federal commission, a royal commission. More business leaders are coming forward following the Bondi terror attack. There's also talk that government will return to Parliament early. What more can you tell us on this? We have had you on before. We know that you believe that there should be a federal royal commission, but are you surprised who is coming forward?
Well, I think it just shows the only person that doesn't believe in a Royal Commission is the Prime Minister. The leader of this country has stopped listening to his people, and I think the Australian people have stopped listening to him. The reality is his primary responsibility is to keep us safe. He failed. He won't even take culpability and say sorry for his part in the fact that we have seen a decline in Australian society since the 7th of October 2023. We have seen on the streets of Sydney and Melbourne in particular, it burning right through to the massacre on the beach of Bondi, that we've got a Prime Minister that has led us and seen a degradation of our society. This Prime Minister is letting his ideology and his ego get in the road of what's doing right for the people of Australia and giving justice and making sure this doesn't happen again. This is all about a political fix rather than the fix of our society that needs to come from strong leadership from a Prime Minister that understands the hurt, the anguish, not just in Bondi and the Jewish community, but right across this country, from the outback to the beaches. Australians are frustrated, they're angry, they're hurt, and they want to help. And they want a Prime Minister that'll help and make things right. Instead, he's become arrogant and ignorant to what Australians are calling on their Prime Minister to do.
Do you think the Parliament should go back early?
Oh, we should have been back before Christmas. I mean, we had their own special envoys report that gave recommendations, particularly around increased screening on immigration, around making sure that those with extremist view, particularly around anti-Semitism, were dealt with, but also in terms of penalties for hate speech. We need to lower the bar. We need to be able to cancel visas, and those that are Australian citizens need to be isolated from society behind bars. We could have achieved that before Christmas. Chris Minns brought his Parliament back before Christmas. I'm prepared to get on a plane today if Anthony Albanese has the courage to look Australians in the eye and say, I'm going to do something about this, and we're not going to accept our society going down this path of hatred that has been allowed to permeate through our society since October 2023.
David, I've spoken to numerous people, especially in regional Australia, who are really upset, quite emotional, in fact, about the gun laws. They're worried about their business. They're worried about, having to give back guns, not being able to purchase the guns in the future, the whole industry. They don't feel like they have been listened to yet again. What are your thoughts on the gun laws and, was it a knee-jerk reaction?
Of course it was. This was all about a political fix. Guns are not the problem. Extreme Islamic ideology is the problem in this country. Even what Chris Minns changed the laws in New South Wales too would not have averted what the tragedy on Bondi happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. The reality was the laws that he's changed would not have made one difference whatsoever. This was all about political expedience. You're going to spend $1 billion on taking guns off innocent, law-abiding gun owners who have licences, are all for a political fix. Do you really think that if someone has as much hate in their heart as those two animals did on the beaches of Bondi, that they will not find a means to try and slaughter Australians? Those gun laws actually worked. There are real questions that need to be asked that when one of the perpetrators was on a watch list, why the guns and the licence wasn't revoked. If you've got a domestic violence order in this country, your gun licence and your gun is revoked, and so it should be. You just can't walk in and get a gun in this country. You have to pass a fit and proper person test. There's a withholding period of 28 days in most states. There's also training. There's also a checking by police of how the guns are stored, and licences don't go on for perpetuity. High-powered weapons are licensed for 2 to 5 years, and you have to prove why you need a high-calibre gun. Let me just say, people in cities shouldn't be stereotyped on this either. Understand that they play a very important role in pest management for farmers who don't have the time or energy. They rely on recreational hunters from capital cities and big, large cities to come out and do much of the work they don't have the time nor the energy to undertake in pest mitigation of pigs and dogs and deer. And this is where we are just being left at the mercy of a politically expedient decision to try and shift the attention away from Anthony Albanese's failings of addressing anti-Semitism in this country.
David Littleproud, thank you very much for joining us today, and happy 2026 to you and your loved ones. Thank you.
To you too.